All right. Hello.
Hi there.
All right. We can hear you good. So we're good to go. I would I need to do an introduction. So my next guest started as a pediatrician watching kids come in with diet-related health issues. And instead of just treating the system, she decided, let's go upstream. Dr. Nimali Fernando, known as Dr. Yum, is the founder of the Dr. Yum Project, a nonprofit that has brought evidence-based food education to families across the US and beyond. She's a pediatrician, a public health leader, a co-author of Raising a Healthy, Happy Eater, and she's now working directly with Farmers Truck to build food literacy tools for mobile market operators. Nimali, welcome.
Thank you. It's always fun having a conversation with you.
Likewise. Um, okay, so let's start with setting up the ground. We have people joining us from all over the place. So for operators joining us, can you explain what food literacy actually means? And not just eating well, but the deeper idea behind it. What are we talking about when we say someone is food literate?
Yeah, so I think there is a commonly held understanding of what food literacy is, which is really, I think, the understanding of the impact of what food does for the body, and kind of the skills and knowledge that supports that, right? And, I'm a pediatrician, so I'm always thinking about how does that apply to children? And so I actually think in a lot of ways I push back on that broad generalization of what food literacy is, because when you think about what most people then consider food literacy, reading food labels, right? Understanding maybe how much calcium they need in a day or how much vitamin D they need in a day. That doesn't necessarily apply to children as easily when they are learning to eat. So, as a pediatrician, I have kind of my own paradigm about what food literacy should be, more from a developmental standpoint. And if you don't mind, I can share that with you because I think that can be applied broadly even to adults.
Well, I think you work at this very important window of developmental, humans growing to be adults and
Right.
needing not only the right nutrition, but being set up for success for the future, right?
Yes, yes,
And that applies obviously to adults who maybe have not had the opportunity to have some food literacy or develop that skill, right? It's a
right,
skill you practice.
right, right. So I think the foundations of food literacy are a little bit different when we think about children and even adults. So in my experience, food literacy begins with the developmental skill of learning to eat, right? Being able to chew and enjoy and swallow a wide variety of novel and nutritious foods. That is a very complex skill, which I don't think even pediatricians spend enough time thinking about when we're talking about nutrition to our patients. How did a child actually learn to eat, and was that development disrupted? So that's something I could talk about all day because there's gross motor skills, fine motor skills, language, cognitive skills, all that go into creating a great eater. And if that development is disrupted, it's really hard to think about food literacy, right? If you don't know how to eat a wide variety of foods. So I think that's the first part of food literacy. The other important part, I think, is a foundation of food curiosity, right? Children are naturally curious. And so we as adults need to keep that curiosity alive the best that we can, right? Without saying, you're not going to like that, or that looks too green, and you don't enjoy those foods. When a child is approaching a food with curiosity, we have to let that happen, right? So that is really important. And then the other important foundational piece of food literacy is creating a healthy relationship with food. Okay. And that means not necessarily putting food into a healthy or unhealthy bucket or good food or bad food bucket, but recognizing there is a time and a place for all foods, understanding where foods come from, I think is an important part of a healthy relationship with food,
Hmm.
and understanding what food does for your body. And that's something that we really try to focus on a lot in our programming with the Dr. Young Adventure, which is in preschools, really developing that healthy relationship with food so that kids are able to then progress in their food literacy journey to make healthy and smart choices.
As you say, labels are a challenge, and
Mhm.
oftentimes we get labeled as picky, and that reinforces the wrong muscle. When you were
Right.
just saying the same thing with food, right? Maybe we label food as like, oh, this is a weekend thing because it's, I don't know, maybe it's too sweet or too fat or something. But
Mhm.
that builds either pulls you towards food or pulls you away, depending,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
So let's just explore the labeling part that went and how you want or you see a better way forward.
Well, as I mentioned, we have a program called the Food Adventure, and the way that we manage that conversation with children is we talk very simply about what foods do for your bodies, right? So we have these 10 superpowers, we call them. They are vitamins, minerals, and fiber. And we talk about how some foods have a lot of superpowers. And so we want to eat those foods a lot, right? Because they're helping us grow, they're helping our brain, they're boosting our bones, right? They're healing our cuts and scrapes, right? We make this very easy for children to understand. And then other foods may not have as many superpowers, so we can enjoy them because maybe we have certain memories around them. They feel comfortable to us. They're associated with a particular holiday or food tradition, but they're not necessarily foods we want to put in our bodies all the time because they don't have as many superpowers. And so we are not necessarily putting foods on a pedestal and making them more desirable, right? Or demoting them and making them more desirable. We're saying this is just how we think about food and how much space certain foods should occupy on our plate every day. And I think that's simpler for children and it creates a better foundation for a healthy relationship with food and a better way for children to navigate food on their own. Because kids grow up fast. I'll tell you, I've got a 23 and an 18, 19-year-old, and they were little biddies a minute ago. And so you have to help them navigate this on their own because you're not always going to be there to say, that food's not healthy, so don't eat it all the time. Like kids need to be able to exercise those decision-making decisions every day as they start going to school on their own and go to college or wherever they're going to go be independently. So, yeah, I think that's a way that we can start that foundational conversation.
So we've talked about a lot of the different topics I want to bring up, but let me pick one in there that we haven't really discussed. So, let's talk about the window, the early childhood window, and how important that is. And
Yeah.
so, a question to you would be, you've built your work around the idea that learning to eat a wide variety of food is a developmental process,
Hmm.
just like talking or reading.
Yep.
Dr. Yum, why does that reframe matter so much, and why do we get wrong when we ignore it?
Yeah. I think if we can imagine that feeding is a developmental process, like any other developmental process, then we can teach that development in a more inclusive way, in a way that's less judgmental, that doesn't blame parents when things don't go wrong, that doesn't stigmatize children, and that uplifts that development. right? So we've talked about this before. When you think about reading, if a child struggles to read, we don't blame the child and say they're a bad reader. We don't blame the parents for not reading enough. We come up with an evidence-based system to help that child. We employ the work of experts to help that child, and we eventually help them to learn to read. And so, if we can apply that same framework to children when they learn to eat, then we stop using labels. We stop blaming children for their behavior. And we think about this as development that may be heterogeneous. Some kids learn things really fast, some kids learn feeding really fast, and other kids may struggle. But if we can stop labeling, and the most common label I hear all the time is picky eater, right? And that label, is one we use a lot because it's in the lexicon. Everybody knows what that is. But when we're saying that to a child, it's the same thing as saying, you're a bad reader, right? And in discouraging them from growing and learning, when in fact, everyone can progress, even adults. Um, so I think that's an important way that I try to reframe the way adults think about hesitant eating or challenged eaters is to use a different way to describe that, especially in front of children, right? So I'll say, "Oh, you mean they're a learning eater?" Or "Oh, they're an exploring eater or a practicing eater," right? That shows kids that they can get better, right? And they
Hmm.
can continue to grow.
And they're growing. That's the
And they're
thing.
growing and they're
They're
learning.
growing.
Yes.
One thing I've heard you say when we had many different chats, but one
Yeah.
thing I remember you saying is the most amount of fun I've had with a classroom of learning or practicing eaters was at the farmers market.
Yeah.
Maybe you can just tell me why. Why did you find that out?
I think at the farmers market, there's just so many ways that kids can satisfy their curiosity. And there are many teachable moments where adults can model curiosity. And I will say, as someone who's taken care of kids and families for over 2 decades, we have to acknowledge that feeding development has been disrupted across generations, right? There are many adults trying to parent or teach or model that they themselves maybe didn't go through all the stages of feeding development and food literacy, right? Starting with curiosity. And so, if we can, in the context of a farmer's market, start to employ that modeling by just being curious in front of children around food, that is a huge first step. And I think adults can practice this. I think there's room for improvement. I have done a lot of health fairs and a lot of demonstrations where I'll be making a beautiful green dragon smoothie from the Dr. Yum website with spinach and grapes and all these wonderful fruits, flavors, and lime and ginger. And the kids will come up to the table and they'll see the bright green Dixie cups full of the green dragon smoothie. And the parents will say, "Oh, that's green. You don't like green." And the kid is on the way to taking a sip. So I think adults can do better
Hmm.
by allowing that curiosity to happen and also allowing um, ourselves to show curiosity, right? Even
Leading
if
by example, right?
Yeah, leading by example. Even if we are stuck in our own development, and we can use that as a teachable moment. There are foods that I still don't love, but I try to show children around me that I'm practicing, right? I'm still practicing green peppers, Fred. I'm just going to tell you that. I like
Um,
the red ones. I practice the orange ones. I'm really good at those, but I'm still practicing
it's
green peppers.
bitter, huh? The green is a bit bitter.
Something about the taste. I feel like, though, over the years, I can tolerate them more. So there's progress, right? And maybe someday I will actually like or love them. But I think we have to be honest with kids that we can practice hard things and do hard things too, and do things that are uncomfortable, and that we're still okay, right? And we should show up with that curiosity when we're going to the farmer's market, for instance. Talk to a farmer, see if you can get a taste, right? I see this happening a lot in my local farmers market here in Virginia, where we have wonderful, robust farming communities. A lot of the farmers are very willing to give a little taste tasting bite to a curious young eater. And that's a powerful moment. That's a great teachable moment.
I think that one takeaway from this is that as a mobile market, you are a farmer's market on wheels. And you are bringing that show to a community that has had very little of that type of show in maybe ever. Or they lost their grocery store or whatever that is.
Right.
When we operate our own mobile market and I saw a family come with their children, I would always look at it as an opportunity. And I would look at the mom or the dad and I'd be like, hey, he gets to pick whatever he wants on the shelf. Whatever he wants to try, he goes and pick it. Point at it, I'll open it up, I'll cut it, whatever needs to happen. And I try to do that every single time there was a parent coming because we change our food every week. We follow the season, make it fun, make it interesting, make it an event every week.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of success with that. And we've also spent a lot of time learning about the farmers,
Yeah.
their story. What's with their apple? Why are they so good? Or their
Yeah.
strawberry? Or, is it organic? Is it maybe not organic, but it's, pesticides free or very little pesticide?
Yeah.
And farmers will talk your ears out about it too. So you just have to ask. That's their passion. Um,
The other thing I love, Fred, about farmers markets is there are so many varieties of foods that you may not find elsewhere. And for kids, baby steps are really important. So, a child who's learning to get out of their comfort zone might find a variety that's close enough to something they like, right? They love a watermelon, but they've never tried a yellow watermelon. Well, here's an opportunity to try something new. That's sort of a food chain, right? It's a flavor that they're used to, it's a texture maybe that they're used to, but it's a different color. And so they're taking the steps towards trying something different, which will allow them to take bigger and bigger steps in the future.
um, I'm trying to figure out what's the segue to this conversation. So let's make it practical. So I just talked about one of the ways we used to do some intervention.
Hmm.
Beautiful intervention this morning that Mike was talking about. You may or may not be there, Nimali, but he was mentioning that in his store, his staff is instructed to look at which family is really struggling. If they're counting their pennies and they have, a bunch of kids, and he would
Yeah.
go and tap it on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, somebody paid your grocery. Here's a gift card."
Wow.
And so these are the micro interventions that would
Yeah.
change potentially. Um, well, maybe that instance is really like emergency, right? There's somebody's
Sure.
really struggling. But for a children, this small little activity you've done, this little brief intervention could set them off on a whole new curiosity path
Yes. Yes.
of discovering everything that could possibly taste. And which is, and somebody in the comment I just saw that said the green peppers are not good because they're not ripe, and that's true. The the
It's true.
so they're
I
not.
just have to wait and then they'll get yummier.
That's right. And maybe depending on what you're cooking, this is what you're looking for. You need a bit of bitterness. I don't know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm not that great of a cook. I wish I was. Okay, so let's talk about maybe, a few other interventions. Let's, put ourselves in the shoes of an operator. You're inside this truck, you have families going around, some are shopping. How would you approach, let's say, a family that's kind of curious, let's say, and not sure
Yeah.
what to do?
I think meeting families where they are is really important. So knowing maybe what they like, what they're cooking at home, so they can maybe take a step that doesn't feel too unsafe or unfamiliar. So I think that can be really helpful. What are the things that you're making most of the time? Oh, well, here's something that you can add to that, or here's something close enough, but has a little bit of a different flavor. We forget with children that they are trying foods for the first time. And if we can put ourselves back in that situation, if I put a plate of something in front of you and you'd never seen anything like it, and you didn't know what it was going to taste like or feel like in your mouth, you would be a little bit concerned or curious, or at least you'd want to know, okay, what is this like, right? And so if we can describe to families, oh, this kind of variety is like a sweet potato, it's actually sweeter, or it has a little bit more of a firm taste, just to break down maybe the barriers or the anxiety even around,
Mm.
well, maybe I'll bring this home and I won't like it, right?
Some something we used to say was, if I saw they were kind of just browsing, I was like, "So what are we cooking tonight?" And
Yeah,
just that.
yeah,
Like, and they're like, "Well, I was thinking about doing that." Well, have you tried this? These
yes,
are ground cherries. You know, they're it's kind of weird. They're on their little wrapper thing, but they're bitter, sour. But you know, people like it. You could try it out. And
yeah.
also, when you're a kid like me, that's neurodiverse, problem with textures and things. And I remember you saying, you know, it needs a bit more leeway around
Mhm.
how they adopt new food. Like
Mhm.
you were saying, if they've never had an apple, you put the apple on the table and you let them kind of acclimatize to
Mhm.
the color, the shape, before you even get them to touch it. Sometimes that could
Yes,
maybe you
yes.
can talk a bit about that. Like,
Yeah, that's something that we do in our program is a multisensory exploration of food because not everybody is ready to just jump in and take a bite or make that recipe. So we have to create some confidence, some sensory confidence for these kids. And that may happen through other activities besides tasting, right? When we start a lesson in our preschools, the kids are simply passing around the fruit or vegetable and learning about the superpowers and how it grows, but also feeling it with their fingers, smelling it, even listening to how is that snap sound when you snap the sugar snap pea? All of those things are really important, using their language to describe what they're feeling. So that's part of the sensory exploration. And then we provide a number of extension activities. So these are activities teachers can do if they choose to around certain domains like movement, music, literacy, art, science, global food traditions, right? Learning about
mm,
how other cultures may have started eating this food and how maybe that food has gone to other parts of the world and how they're eating it. So, all of those are ways that we can develop a relationship with food before we pressure a child to try, right? So, they're coming with that knowledge and that experience, and they have the good vibes of the pepper, right?
right.
Before they take a bite of it.
Um, okay, so how are we doing on time, Basil? I think we have maybe 3 minutes left. Is that if I am I
Yeah,
correct on
yeah,
this?
just
Okay.
about.
Okay. So one last question, and this
Yeah.
is very pie in the sky. But so if you know, if every mobile market operator in this country had a food literacy backed into what they do, so it's
Mhm.
baked in, it's beyond access, it's intervention, it's you know developing this way to interact and intervene and you know inject yourself in the conversation. um what change would happen? What would we see, let's say, in 10 years from now? Pie in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there's so much room for first establishing the foundation of food literacy with the three things that we talked about. Those developmental skills, right? Getting kids to try things, take a bite, advance those skills, that curiosity, showing the curiosity. The mobile market folks themselves can show the curiosity, but also they can model that for parents who remember their developmental journey may have been disrupted in feeding too. So they can model how they as adults can be curious about food in their homes as well. And then that relationship with food, helping develop that relationship with food, talking about how it grows, where it comes from, what it does for their body, even providing recipes. I mean, I started this whole journey, Fred, giving recipes to my patients because I didn't know how else that was practical that could really move the needle, right? So if we're able to develop that foundation of food literacy, starting with those skills, we can help this pattern of disruption across generations and start to heal that and develop a stronger base. So then on top of that, we can build cooking skills, reading labels, all of those general other things that people think of with food literacy. And that I think has the potential to create incredible health outcomes across generations, right? From babies to grandparents. And I say our work, although we focus in children, is really teaching kids and the adults how to model this curiosity and build these skills and watch the ripples across generations. We're a public health organization, and that's really the goal is to change health outcomes across generations.
It sounds very powerful. Like in the sense that, if you are able to instill that curiosity, these three base, we call it the base skills or the
Mhm.
foundational skills, then the family gets on board, the family acts as leads with example, then the next generation of that family will most likely continue that,
Yes,
right? And so you potentially set this family moving forward.
yes,
That's really
yes.
cool.
Yeah,
Uh, Nimali, thank you very much for your time. And thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise. It's very appreciated. I think we are going to leading by example, eating by example. Oh, Charlotte had a comment. Eating by example. That's true. You don't
yeah,
need to say anything. You just need to be present, right? And like
yeah.
try something new.
Take a bite and show everybody how delicious it is.
That's right. I
And
appreciate your time. Oh,
I also just wanted to add one thing. I feel like that curiosity that you build within the child might not just apply to food. I feel like it could apply to curiosity across everything else in their life.
100%. When we teach children this growth mindset around food, we have a yum score. We show them that they can get better and that can practice food. They start talking about practicing everything. And what is happening? They're building resilience. They're showing that they can practice hard things and get better. And
mm,
that goes across developmental domains and really generalizes outside of feeding to so many other beautiful areas that they need to develop as children.
building
Absolutely.
confidence, right?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. So I will wrap this up in a bow. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great 3 hour-ish together. And so, Basil, I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, but
No, I think we're just gonna wrap it up. You're gonna
okay.
just show some of the takeaways from the breakouts that I put together really quickly, and yeah, just share a couple of resources. But Dr. Mali, thank you for everyone. Feel free to come on camera and have a bit of a talk with us now. We are done with the speaker portion of everything, so Fred's gonna share some resources, but otherwise. Stop us at any moment if you have questions. Again, thank you, Dr. Namali.
of course.
All right. So, final words. This is the roll.